What's going on, everyone? We're going to kick the show off in just a minute here. Sam is settling in. Hop in the chat. I got pumpkin beer. I put this on our Instagram page, on the Twitter page. Miami game's over. October starts in a couple of hours. It is time for some pumpkin beer. Going with a little heavy C's. I will talk about it a little bit later. Sam, can you hear me? The mute button got you.
I can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, good. Good. I'm going to kick off the show then. Welcome to College Football Monday, a Sons of Saturday live show. I'm your host, Pete B. I've got my co-host, Sam Jesse, here, as always. Sam, how you feeling tonight, buddy?
I am feeling better, less sad. I will say this. I think I would be more sad if the national college football landscape wasn't as exciting as it is right now. This is our national show. We're not going to harp on the Hokies too much. Obviously, I got the Calgorithm Bear shirt on. I just think the sport is at a really fun and interesting place right now. So if we're getting into cheers, that's my cheers. This thing is awesome. Army and Navy are looking great. Cal is hosting game day for the first time. Alabama, Georgia just played an instant classic. Texas is all the way back. This is awesome, dude.
Yeah. Cheers.
The beer is chilling in the fridge. That'll be a second half of the show.
First taste of pumpkin beer down the chute for the season. Yeah, in this episode, we are going to tackle a lot of different things. We are going to be joined by Rob from Right for Cal. He's the host of the California Bearcast. He'll be coming on about 8:20, 8:25-ish, and that's going to be fun because we want to talk about game day. Yes, Sam, we're going to talk about the Canes even more this week because not only did Virginia Tech have a devastating loss on Friday night to them, but they are playing those California Golden Bears. No, this is not a Miami podcast. It's just how the guests have lined up these last two shows. And I did want to say that we're brought to you by Jack and Coke, if I didn't mention it. You can see the Jack and Coke can on the screen. Great drink. We will talk about that a little bit later when we do our ad read. We are past the march for 3,000 subscribers, Sam. We got there. Thank you all for coming in. We got a ton of subscribers on our last episode. Pat and Billy's shows of the last couple of weeks have done really well. They've taken some heat from Canes fans. We've taken some heat from Canes fans, but a lot of commentary, a lot of engagement. So that has been really cool for College Football Monday.
YouTube doesn't know what the comments say, really. They just know that there are comments. So thank you. Whatever thought comes to your head, please put it in the comment section. Will not bother me one bit.
We're going to get to our stock up and stock down teams, and we're going to give you our updated playoff predictions at the end of the show before we do games for next week. Sam did us our cheers. So now I want to talk about that packed weekend because it really was from Friday through the end of Saturday, all the way to the bitter end of Saturday. It was a packed weekend of action. Let's get right to Alabama and Georgia. Alabama beat the Dogs 41-34. They're eating the dogs, Sam. And it was a wild, wild game. I couldn't believe the score when I was out with some friends and stuff and I had been paying attention, but then I look at halftime and it's 30-7. Alabama is cruising and Georgia comes roaring back, took a 1-point lead late in the game, and then the play happened. The long throw to Ryan Williams. He spins when he catches it. He does a jab step spin after that, and it could be the highlight of the college football season, all to take the lead back from the Dogs at the end of the game. Just an incredible play.
So, honesty, right? This is YouTube is a safe space, right? Okay. I was at the movies.
No.
I recorded the thing on YouTube TV. I didn't check my phone for 3 hours and I watched it when I got back.
Oh, okay. All right. So you didn't see it.
Oh yeah. I watched it like I was watching it live. I did fast forward through a good portion of the first half because it looked like it was going to be a rout. Like one of those games where one team shows up, the other one doesn't. And Georgia looked shell shocked, like that they were not ready. But then it was like slowly but surely, they chipped away. And I think you saw a little bit of Alabama's main weakness. Their defensive secondary looked not good for a large portion of that game. Georgia was able to capitalize on that. But man, I mean, what an electric football game. Alabama is just as stacked as they ever have been talent wise. Kalen DeBoer is a wizard as a football coach. Like, I think he is, if he sticks at this pace, he has like all time winning percentage opportunity with what he did at Fresno, what he did at Washington. Now he's at Alabama. Like, the dude just wins football games. And that is, I know we like Alabama is very much the evil empire of college football, but he puts out really fun teams. Jalen Milroe was awesome, and that was a great college football game.
Putting that level of X's and O's guy with that level of resources is crazy. And
have we seen that as an offensive coach? The only one I can think of is like Urban Meyer at Ohio State.
I thought that about when Saban went to Bama and when Calipari went to UK. It was like, oh shit, they got the best recruiter at both sports at the best two resource schools. Now, Nick Saban's the GOAT, and X's and O's be damned. He's just an incredible football coach, and he learned to adjust and get the right coordinators. Calipari never quite. He won a title with overwhelming talent. And so there's a little bit of difference there. Like maybe Bill Self at Kansas. I mean, there's some other examples of that go hand in hand, but that's what Kalen DeBoer is. He's one of the best offensive minds in football, and he's got anything he could ever want at Alabama.
Yeah, I was thinking about it at the college level. I can't think of an offensive mind that has had this level of access to funds and this access to talent.
It would be Urban at Florida, I feel like.
Yeah. Or we'll talk about them in a bit. Steve Sarkisian at Texas feels like kind of a cheat code.
Yeah, and he has improved as a coach over time. Like he's been at big programs before and done decent. Now he's doing really, really well.
Mm-hmm.
Just to finish off the point on Georgia and Alabama, like Carson Beck looked dead in the water in the beginning of this game, and he came back and he had a really good second half, got them back in the game, and they even had a chance to win it at the end. And there was the unfortunate interception if you're a Georgia fan, but just a high level football game that was like so close to an NFL game is like the feeling of it. It felt like a Sunday night football game, just massive. And the sad part is because of the way it started, I feel like a lot of people did turn it off or did move it to a second screen and didn't see it, maybe not in real time and just caught up with it later.
Okay. So that was Georgia Bama part 1 for this season. Do we get a part 2? And could we get a part 3?
Oh my God, dude. I mean, yes to all of them. We could. I want to talk about Georgia and their playoff stuff a little bit later on when we do our playoff talk.
Perfect.
Kentucky upset number 6, Ole Miss 20-17. Low scoring game, back and forth, rock fight style of game. It's what Kentucky likes to do. There were 9 total sacks in the game. But UK put together a 6-play, 83-yard drive, fumbled it into the end zone, but still scored to take the lead. Like they had 2 wacky plays on that drive that ended up getting them the lead. Ole Miss had a chance at it too. Dart made that long play.
Yep.
They come down. The field goal was a 48-yarder, and it missed badly. It did. It was Ole Miss. I think Jacoby had the tweet. They don't call it Old Make.
I mean, Ole Miss had, I think, 4 offensive possessions before Kentucky scored that they had the opportunity to go up 2 scores and ice that game. Mm-hmm. And I don't think they crossed the 50 in any of those drives. Like Kentucky's defense stood on its head for the second time we've seen them do that this year.
I mean, is Kentucky like the 4th best team in the country with what they've done?
Like, here's the thing, like I still believe, like, I don't think Stoops coaches after this year. I don't think they're a very good team, but defensively they are insane. And I think their offense is so bad that it lulls the opponent to sleep. and the
Godfrey
opponent
said
just
they were
isn't
Iowa.
ready. They are. They are an Iowa team, and I was not impressed with Ole Miss offensively. Defensively, their corners lost almost every one-on-one contested opportunity. Like there were so many third downs where Ole Miss had a blanket on him. He was covering them all. I'm like, didn't make the play. So I worry about Ole Miss when they play some of these more talented offenses in the SEC coming up. What are their corners going to be able to do one-on-one against those guys?
Yeah. I thought that this loss for Ole Miss, it's not crushing. They can still make the playoff and everything, but it makes the rest of what they've done this season, you call it into question. Like their best win is Wake Forest, who just lost to the Raging Cajuns. Good job, Louisiana, but Wake is a dumpster fire right now.
Yep.
And Ole Miss was 1 of 10 on third down. Like, did you say that, Sam? I don't know if you did, but
I did not, but that is
it's horrific. And it's a bad look on Dart, right? And so, yes, they have an incredible running back in Trey Harris, despite their other running back leaving for Ohio State in the offseason.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. It's the receiver. Trey Harris is the receiver, but they got skill talent was my point. 11 catches, 176 and a touchdown. And Dart is going to throw them into games and throw them out of games at points this year. And
True.
I just didn't expect them to lose this one at home. Like you can't, if you want to be a playoff team, you really can't drop this one in the Grove.
I mean, how much of this too is you had a team in Kentucky who's played Georgia, they've played South Carolina, like they've been tested. Whereas you play a Ole Miss team that played nobody for the first few weeks, like absolutely nobody. I include Wake Forest on the road in that. Like Wake Forest is not a high level football team this year. So how much of it was Kentucky was ready for that physicality and ready for that challenge? Ole Miss wasn't.
Yeah, it's very true. Let's move to Notre Dame. They were able to hold off Louisville 31-24. Notre Dame got up 21-7. UL slowly chipped away, and it had it to 24-17 before Notre Dame essentially clinched it with a touchdown to Love. I don't get the feeling Notre Dame is like too thrilled with the way their offense has been playing. It's a good win, and they got revenge on Louisville from last year, but it wasn't a clean game for either team, really.
No, both teams had a negative expected points added for this game. So it was not a pretty football game by any means. I will say, though, one, Notre Dame continues to be one of the best home field teams in big games of anybody in the country. Like, if they play a team that's not Marshall or from the MAC or something like that, they win in Notre Dame Stadium. And then Riley Leonard he's not a sexy quarterback. Like, he's just not. He doesn't have a great arm. He's not a guy who's going to be an elite pocket passer, but he's kind of a gamer. He makes these plays and he can run, and it adds that extra dimension. And if Notre Dame's defense is as good as they have been, they're a playoff contender. Like, this team could win a lot of football games this year. I know we don't think that after the Northern Illinois game, and that's looking like a worse and worse loss as the year goes on. But this could be a really good team. All of Louisville's touchdowns were like amazing plays by Louisville, all three of them. Yeah. So the Irish, they're not dead yet.
No, if their offense could be more consistent, they can go to a different level because they're good. Like Notre Dame's good is really good. Like what they did to Purdue was like that was so
what they did to Texas A&M.
Yeah.
That's a decent Texas A&M team too.
Penn State took care of Illinois 21-7. For the final 50 minutes of this game, Illinois didn't do anything on offense, just 219 yards overall on offense for the Illini, 9 penalties, and -2 in turnover margin for Illinois as well. So Aller wasn't amazing, but the rush game allowed him to just be a manager in this one. 239 yards rushing for Penn State, 5.4 yards per carry, and 3 touchdowns. It was just a solid win over a ranked team.
Yeah, and Penn State is right there with Notre Dame. Like they're the same style team. It's defense, it's run the ball, it's decent quarterback play, not a lot of explosives. And because of that, I don't think they're going to blow out a lot of Big Ten teams, but they're just so suffocating on defense. And it's a really good win for them. Illinois has been proven to be a good team, but Penn State, this felt like their first challenge of the year, and they stepped up. And I think they kind of dominated this game but because of their play style, like they were never going to cover 18, 19 points, whatever that got up to.
No. And it feels very similar to the West Virginia game, a game where they pretty much dominated, but the final margin isn't anything to write home about. And that's probably going to come back to bite Penn State at some point. And when that playoff talk later, Sam, Penn State is going to be in there. Notre Dame, I want to talk to you about that, and USC. And those 2-3 teams are linked. And we're going to have to talk about who could get in of those 3 teams. Kansas State bounced back big from their game against BYU, which was so ugly. They beat OK State 42-20. It was tight for a while. And that's a kind of a theme of this weekend. There were a lot of games that were tight. And then the better team opened it up. And in this case, it was Kansas State. They scored right before the half and didn't look back. Avery Johnson, 92.6 QBR, over 300 total yards for him, and 5 touchdowns. This was a growth game for Johnson.
And this is an explosive offense. They have a lot of guys who can make big plays. Yes, Billy Ray, I am wearing the Cal shirt.
Oh, yeah, let me get that up there.
Yeah. I think this was a really good bounce back for K-State. I think Oklahoma State, though, is treading water at this point. Because
they're not a good football team.
They've played 2 good teams and they've lost to 2 good teams. And how do you come back from that? Like, I think a 2-loss team could maybe make it into the Big 12 title, but because their 2 losses were to 2 other title contenders, I don't mathematically see a world where that happens realistically. So I think any way you slice it, this might end up being a pretty disappointing season in Stillwater.
Because the Big 12 is wide open, and if I had to eliminate a couple teams, Oklahoma State's on that list. Like they just are. I really don't think they can do it because Bowman, he's not good enough to win these types of games. He's not. USC opened it up on Wisconsin in the second half. They won 38-21. And I was really feeling good about my Badgers plus 14.5 at the beginning of that game. I'm like, oh, I got this thing locked up. Badgers are playing tough. And I guess USC was sleepy, but man, did they wake up. They scored 28 straight points, including a pick 6 at the end, outgained the Badgers. I want to say it was like by 200 yards or something close to it, maybe a 150, 29-19 first down advantage, 29-13 first down advantage, overcame 3 turnovers. And they got Penn State and Cali in a couple weeks. So
big game.
It is. This was a good win because it could have been, they just came off the Michigan loss.
Yeah.
Like it could have been a tough spot for them. Wisconsin's not very good and they're playing with that backup quarterback, but I still thought them opening it up late, seeing a little bit of fire. Miller Moss played pretty good. It was a nice win for them.
Miller Moss has a little bit of juice in him.
Yeah.
He's got a little bit of not quite Baker Mayfield level moxie, but he's got a little
bit of Baker Mayfield.
He's got a little bit of something in there. And I think he's fun, dude. He's really fun. Also, shout out USC. I think they mentioned this on the broadcast. They have the prettiest grass field I have ever seen. It is the most beautiful green grass field in college football, hands down. It is shocking.
I always thought Notre Dame's looks pretty good on TV. I don't know, like, but Notre Dame's always seems a little thicker.
It's the prettiest bright green. And it's cut really short, and it's like, it's just perfect.
Arizona got a big win at Rice Eccles, 23-10. This one threw me for a loop, Sam. Yeah. It comes down to the Cam Rising thing, which we went over last week. It doesn't make sense. The backup's not very good. He's young. I took Arizona to cover. I did not expect them to win by 13 points.
Yeah, it is. I mean, talk about a tough place to go and win. That's one of the toughest at night. Utah defensively hung in there, but Arizona played their best game of the season by far. Their defensive backs were flying all over the field. It was Virginia Tech versus Marshall level of pass breakups in that game. You said it. Utah has to figure out this Cam Rising thing. If you're injured and can't play, you can't play. But the week-to-week stuff, waiting till game time, it's got to be a distraction for these players because he is their team leader and he came back to compete for a national title. And if this team has a healthy Cam Rising, they're not only a playoff team, but they're a team that can compete for a national title. But without him, they aren't that good because they don't have a ton of playmakers on offense. They need their quarterback to be that playmaker. So, yeah, Utah's got to figure it out, but a good performance from Arizona. They needed that because they did not look good in the first few games.
They didn't, and they don't get this win unless they stop Utah on 4 out of 4 fourth downs.
Yeah.
Like that was the difference in this game. The margin makes it look worse, but Utah, this was another game where like the team that lost really outgained them, played pretty well, but those key moments, they turned the ball over and Arizona got 4 stops and they're right back in the Big 12 race. Now K-State has the tiebreaker over Arizona,
Well,
but
do they? That's not a conference game.
Oh, you're right. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I forgot about that.
So that is a wash. And that is that threw me for a loop too. It's stupid. It's so stupid. But we'll get to it later with our stock up, stock down.
One more game before we add our guest. I can see he's in the green room. Rob from the excuse me, the Golden Bearcast will be joining us in just a minute. But let's just briefly talk about Oklahoma and Auburn because that was the last kind of crazy game of the day. Sooners had no business winning this game. We're down 21-10 in the fourth. Couldn't move the ball at all. They got a touchdown and then a disastrous pick 6 by Auburn. And all of a sudden, Oklahoma was ahead. They outgained, like, I think it was Auburn outgained them by 200 yards, 26-11 first down ratio. A horrible result for Hugh Freeze. Like, just a crushing defeat.
I put this in a Twitter chat or a group text, something. I don't remember. But does Auburn win an SEC game this year? Their best bet will be Vandy, but I don't know, man. Like, I don't know how much this team can score. I think like 0-8 in the SEC is a real possibility for Auburn right now.
Oof, they've done that too. Not too long
like
ago.
It is like
0-8.
I'm like 2-9 is realistic for this team right now.
2-9 is only 11 games.
2-10. Yes.
Okay, you're just giving a throw on that extra loss,
dude. I mean, the Alabama game. Do we really even need to figure out who's going to win that one?
Last year, man, Alabama, like Auburn had that thing.
I know.
Auburn had that thing. Like every year, it doesn't matter who's good, who's bad. Like they will compete in the Iron Bowl.
Right now, their wins are Alabama, A&M, and New Mexico.
Well, Auburn is a good segue to our guest, and I'm going to add him to the screen right now. Rob from the Golden Bearcast and Right for Cal. Rob Wang, thanks for joining us tonight.
Yeah, appreciate the time, guys.
No problem at all, man. We have been seeing Cal Twitter have its moment online for weeks now. And I talked to you about a week and a half ago, like, hey, I want to get you on the show. I know you're going to Doak Campbell. You guys are hot right now. Let's get a Cal guest on here, new member of the ACC. And you're like, I think I have to put it off a week. So here we are, where you got game day. In that time, you guys managed to get game day.
Yeah.
How you feeling, man? How are the vibes over there in Berkeley?
It's it hasn't been this high in a very long time.
Okay.
I think the thing with game day too is like, I don't think any person in the fan base was like, this is the year we get game day. I think there were a few years in the past, over the last 15, 20 years, where we're like, oh, this is the year. This is the year we get game day. But then for it to be this year, and in the circumstances that we are right now, just it wasn't in the script. So it's insane. Cal Twitter and Calgorithm just exploding has only helped that. You know, I'm in a bunch of Twitter DM group chats with the Burners and all the other Calgorithm guys. Like we're bouncing ideas on, posters and signages for game day, just how to get as many people out there as possible, where to get these things printed. Do we print extra posters for people to hold? It's crazy. And it's been like this for the last 48 hours since that announcement on Saturday.
So I want to give our listeners kind of a lay of the land with Cal. Do me a favor, Rob. If there's a gain on your mic, just turn it up just a little bit, because I want to make sure you're loud and clear.
All right, there you go. Does that help you out a bit?
Yeah, that's better. Yeah, right, for sure. Awesome. Cal started off the season really strong. They were 3-0. They get the win at Auburn, and it did light that fire into Cal Twitter. We started hearing about the Calgorithm. Bigger accounts are talking about they've been infected with the Calgorithm. And prior to FSU, the memes and the AI graphics were completely out of control. And I just want to start this with a couple ones here. I've got this. I think the one on the top right, the Hokie and the bear shaking hands, is from Shelton. And then you've got the woke agenda, the bear getting vaxxed with kind of like a Care Bear look to it. That's our first graphic, but it kind of sets the field and the vibe for what was going on Twitter if you're not plugged in. And it was weird. Like, it is really weird stuff. What they're doing is they're really leaning into like the California, we're the radical left, to the point that you're jokingly referred to as communists, the commies, or Karl Marx, and all these references to Mother Russia, or God knows what. It's so weird.
It's I mean, the guys who have made these memes have just done an outstanding job. I mean, you just look at that. That's
the bottom left, the let's learn critical race theory with the pentagram is one of the funniest things I've ever seen on twitter.com.
Yes.
Ever in my life.
Yeah. I mean, there's a couple. I mean, the one that started it all off was by Dom Grizel, the one that says like, you lost to the woke agenda. That one was the one that really was the.
I don't even know. See, I gathered so many. I don't even know if I have that one. I have the one that says you lost to Gavin Newsom, which is ridiculous. I love the one of Oski with the Terminator pistol and the FSU head. We got 3-2-1 Noel with the rainbow hair, like, and the one like the woke Campbell Stadium. I feel like that terminology, what really like fired it into a new stratosphere, like all because FSU Twitter is very engaged online, and that back and forth took this whole thing to a new level. And I was rooting for you guys so badly to get that win down there.
Yeah, I think we all were. It was like we were the darlings of college football Twitter, and it just sucks that we couldn't deliver, but we get another opportunity. Like, we didn't think we'd get another opportunity, and here we have it with Game Day and Top 10 Miami coming in town. Yeah,
how nuts is it that you guys finally get Game Day, and it is after a loss and after a bye? Like, it's really bizarre. And you know what, Rob? We did you a freaking favor, because if we beat Miami, they're probably not coming to Berkeley this week.
They're definitely not.
It's true. It's 100% true. I know most of the guys that were watching the game were like, let's just have Florida, let's just have Miami just win this casually. Maybe Virginia Tech makes this a relatively close game, but just a simple win. But then no, it had to delve into the chaos of hopefully what happens over on this side, which is formerly Pac-12 After Dark, and you just see some of that chaos ensue. And we got a glimpse of that on a Friday night in Miami, and hopefully more of that happens on the West Coast.
What's funny about the Cal Twitterverse that at least I noticed when I was trying to find, I messaged Sam, I messaged a few other people. I'm like, what's the Cal go-to account? Like, what's the one that we should get on? Who's talking about Cal? And I'm looking through, and it's like, none of the accounts are like really big accounts. It's just like so many accounts that have 400 to 1,500 followers, like probably a good 40 of them. And I followed all of them to try to see who would come to the top of the heap that I would like, okay, this guy's plugged in. And then I found your podcast. And so I wanted to have you on, and you also do the stuff with Right for Cal. So you've been doing this a long time, right?
Yeah. I mean, we've been, the podcast has been going since 2015. The site, we were originally part of SB Nation under the moniker of California Golden Blogs. Okay. And that was years before I even joined. So yeah, it's close. This site's been going probably for close to 20 years.
And you mentioned someone's name with how it started, and you think that actually did this start this year or was it last year?
For
like Calgorithm stuff.
I mean, we've always been around. We've had this little pocket of the Twitter universe. No one's really tapped into it. I mean, I think a lot of the other Pac-12 teams and their sites and their podcasts like knew of us. We always used to have a good back and forth with Oregon's website, Addicted to Quack, and the Quack 12 podcast. Like, those guys are great. And
what a great name.
Wait. We're not going to Addicted to Quack.
Oh, Addicted to Quack. Yeah, that is that's the Oregon site. Hithliday over there does a great job. If you guys ever get a chance to talk with him, he's probably the best football, like, game analyzer that I've seen in the Pac-12 side of things. But yeah, I mean, they used to call us Addicted to Quack South. We used to call them California Golden Blogs North. It was just, there was always a good banter with all these fan bases and the sites, and even in the Pac-12, like Ashley Adamson, who was the studio host for the Pac-12 network, like she's texted us since we exploded. And she's like, she was so happy for us. She's like, it couldn't have happened to a better group of people and the fan base that we've always interacted with. And so, like, I think a small pocket of people knew, but the fact that it just took on this elite tier, which I guess happens to you if you beat Hugh Freeze, like just exploded on us,
because everyone loves when Hugh Freeze loses. That's
exactly. You know,
we all win when that happens.
I mean, most of us were there at Auburn, and we didn't realize this was happening. And then, the morning after, we wake up and we're like, why are notifications exploding? Like, why is our follower numbers just exponentially increasing? Like, and it was all because of people finding out about Calgorithm and all the memes that we were generating.
I got to ask you a few questions about Cal and the move to the ACC that they're doing this year. First off, you make this move. I think Cal fans were really for it, really excited for it to kind of, I guess, jump on a life raft at the dead end of the Pac-12. What has it been like and getting started? I mean, your first ACC game is a road trip all the way to Tallahassee, Florida.
Yeah.
Like, what has it been like as a fan to just have your schedule and your rivalries just switch?
It's been kind of sad and crazy all at the same time. Like when the announcement was first made, it was kind of like a sigh of relief, like we survived. But then we also have friends, that are Washington State fans and Oregon State fans, and like, it's a bit of survivor's remorse, right? It's like, yeah, we made it through, but like at what cost? And then, then going into the ACC and all of this, like we were worried about the travel, like how many games would fans actually go to? Like what would our contingent of fans traveling look like, compared to the likes of LA and Oregon and Seattle? Like, it's this cross country.
You guys have the most travel miles of any team, right?
I believe so. Yeah, I think Stanford's just right behind us.
Mm-hmm.
And if not for the Auburn trip, I think we dip a little bit below too, but that was already pre-scheduled years ago. So,
and USC has a ton. I mean, USC, if you look at their schedule, it's Minnesota, then it's back, then it's Michigan, it's back, whatever. Like it's absolutely nuts for them too. So that is very difficult to get used to.
Yeah.
And later in the season, I feel like could have an impact on the field.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's a good social study experiment, right? Like we just won't know until after the fact, and the players go through all this where we actually start to see the impacts of it. Basketball is like going to be a whole different issue. Just looking at our schedule for this upcoming season, at least for football. Like I've talked to the players, I've talked to the staff, and our coach Justin Wilcox. Someone asked him about the travel, and he's sick of answering that question about travel at this point. So he's like sarcastically like, "There's this new invention called airplanes, and they go really fast." So, but I mean, for football, the guys don't see it as much of a problem because you're only traveling, I think, 6 times, at most. And none of these are real back-to-back travel situations where we're going to be traveling out to Tallahassee and then the week after we're like traveling out to Wake Forest. Like they've done a good job of staggering the travel a little bit. And most of the time they're home. So in regard, I think they're okay with it. But once again, as you guys alluded to, like just the long-term travel and the toll that's going to take is going to be very, very interesting to look forward to.
How important was it for Cal fans to keep the rivalry with Stanford intact in conference?
That was huge. Absolutely huge. And I don't think we make the move. I don't think, nor does Stanford, I think, really make the move if it wasn't for one or the other. I think it definitely was a joint operation in that regard. The fan bases hate each other, but they also are like a joined to the hip with traditions that are intact with those two universities, not just on the football field. So to have that go together where the big game remains and, we can keep that continuity, at least there's some form of those things. The axe, just stays in between the two, and we don't have to worry about it being a out of conference game and fitting it into our schedule and seeing like Oregon State and Oregon play like in September is just a weird thing to see.
Weird, really weird.
So yeah, it's definitely been great, and we've joked around that there's a little bit of a truce between Cal fans and Stanford fans, at least, or the 2 or 3 Stanford fans that exist, for at least the duration of this year.
I do like how you guys will rag on the fact that like there's not a ton of Cal fans out there, but the ones that are in on it, like they're all the way in, and that's really cool. And hey, we've got more than Stanford. We've got more than this team. And that's an ongoing joke as well that presents itself online. On the field, you guys have been solid. And I mentioned the 3-0 start. Unfortunately, you lose to FSU. Mm-hmm. That's a talented team. You're on the road. You've already traveled to Auburn. No shame in that loss. There really isn't, despite how bad FSU has played. Would you say that the team has performed how you expected before the season? Have they exceeded expectations, or is it just par?
That's a good question. There's a little bit of within the fan base and within the writers on our site too. Like there's a little bit of a let's push this question out in a couple weeks, and I think the reason being is because we just haven't had all the bodies we thought would make impacts on this team, at least offensively, within the roster. But for me, I think the offense has definitely been under par. And underperformed. I think the defense has definitely exceeded expectations. I thought they would get to somewhat of this point maybe later in the year, but for them to come out firing like that all season long has definitely been a very nice surprise.
Yeah. And we thought this was a team that had a chance this year. When we talked preseason, Pete, like, we were talking about, hey, Jay Knott, really good. Mendoza, got better as the season went on, kind of took control of that job. The defense, they're probably not going to play that bad again. Like we were talking about Cal as a team that really sleepy West Coast team. Everyone was saying, SMU is the one who can make the jump, Stanford in year 2, like, how are they going to look? But I was like, Cal, probably the best team at all those 3. And it's showing right now. I do think the challenge will be the longevity of this. Like, can they keep it going week to week? I think they have a really big opportunity this week that it just doesn't come along a lot for programs, and especially in the ACC, like you're not going to host a top 10 team very often
on game day.
Like it does not happen.
It's literally never happened for Cal. And not only is it game day, but it is a top 10 team and it's the Miami Hurricanes. So the opportunity is there. And Sam talked about your defense. It's number 16 in yards per play. Now, I know the schedule has been a little weird, but like 16 in yards per play is still not too shabby. What would you say the strength of that defensive unit is?
I think look, the variance is so high for turnovers, but the turnovers have just been significant for us. And the reason I'm hesitant to like buy totally into the turnover hype is because even in 2015, when we had Jared Goff, when we were heading into Utah, and game day was at Utah in that game, we were leading the country in turnovers, and we're like, this defense is amazing. Like we can sustain this, but like, no, it fell off for the second half of the season with just so much variance. And so like, although we have Noel Williams, who's a top 5, I think, or top 3, I think, in interceptions, like I don't think that stat line can hold, but I think our pass defense has taken a very big step forward compared to last season, and that was our biggest issue. Is we just were giving up big play after big play, big after big play through the air. But these guys have locked it down. Noel Williams has taken a step up. Marcus Harris, our transfer from Idaho, has been very, very good. Of course, Woodson, our captain for the week as well. If your name is Woodson and you play in the backfield, you have a lot to live up to, and he's definitely done that so far. And then I think the biggest one is just seeing our pass rush take a step up with Ryan McCullough, a sophomore who I think is top 10 in the country in quarterback hurries, I believe.
You guys have a lot of hurries, and if you look at the pass defense, you talked about the secondary, it's 5th in the country in opposing passer rating allowed.
Yeah.
Yes, DJU is on there. Peyton Thorne is on there.
Yep. San Diego State's pretty bad on offense.
Yeah, but it seems like that the pass rush combined with your DBs is an area of strength. And in this game, playing Cam Ward this weekend,
Mhm.
I hope it's a strength, because that is something that even with as well as I thought we played at times, and me and Sam will get into our VT recap after we hang up with Rob. Miami's so damn good. They're gonna put up yards and points. And so you gotta be in the backfield, defensive backfield, especially, you gotta be on your P's and Q's.
Yeah, I think one of the things that's going for us is the fact that we have played Cam Ward before and we have played Damian Martinez before.
Good point. Yeah.
And I think having that tape on them, just them as players, and the offenses are totally different, but having them and trying and understanding what their tendencies are, and having played them before in just last year alone, having played those two, I think is not an advantage, but I think helps in the preparation for it, where you're not totally prepping for someone new. And so that it's going to be very interesting, because we played Cam Ward pretty well last year. He gave up, I think he had 3 touchdowns and an interception, but then we forced 3 fumbles off of him. So if
he had some Sam.
Yeah,
he's an quarterback. No matter what Miami fans want to think,
he's a whoopsie daisy guy. Yeah.
Yep.
And speaking of quarterbacks, your quarterback Mendoza, he has played decent, especially against Auburn. I thought he played well, but he's not without his warts.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on his performance so far this season? Do you think he's still growing?
Yeah, I think he's definitely still growing. I think he spent the summer at the Manning Passing Academy, which I think has helped his footwork significantly compared to last year as a freshman. But even last year, right, going into this year with the quarterback battle we had with him and Chandler Rogers, my devil's advocate point that I was making about both of those quarterbacks, and particularly with Mendoza, was last year's 3-game win streak to end the year, was that just a rise in form, or was that him actually taking a step in his maturity process? We just didn't know what if it was. And a lot of the times with these younger quarterbacks, for me, like, I look for a game or a half where I can point to me like, that's the ceiling. Like, that's what we're gunning for. That's what we're hoping becomes the consistency. But we didn't have that with Mendoza last year. This year, I think that first half against Auburn was that moment for me, where I was like, that's what we're looking for. The efficient passer, who can get a few more yards with his legs too when need be, and just organizing the offense and running it as, you know, our OC Mike Blesh wanted to, with the run game being ahead of the pass game. And so I think he's taking those steps slowly. I think it's nice for him too, with him being from Miami. Like, there's going to be a little bit of that chip on his shoulder playing against the team that he went to games growing up. And so, yeah, he's definitely taking that step up, and it's going to be interesting to see what his development looks like over the next few weeks.
I'm really excited for you guys in this weekend, because on our last show, Sam and I both said, if Miami beats Virginia Tech, which looked very likely a week ago, and then the game played out and it was close, but I said, regardless of margin, if Miami beats Virginia Tech, Cal is going to beat Miami, because that is ACC football. And it's bigger than that too. It's the traveling out, it's the coming down off an emotional game. It's all of that stuff. And you guys are a good football team. Like, I wouldn't say great, but Cal is a good, solid football team who plays good defense. Justin Wilcox prides himself on good defense. And we saw when we played Cam Ward, when he had to be pressured and wasn't playing a USF or even Florida this year, who's struggling, he struggled. He would make more mistakes. And I'll give Cam Ward credit, because he did what he had to do at the end of that game under immense pressure to drive down and win the game before the play that we will talk about later. And so I just feel like them coming down from that, you guys are in a favorable spot. I don't know if you'll win the game, but I do like the matchup for you. What do you think, Sam?
I like it. It's going to be really tough. And that's the thing where we talked about what could Virginia Tech do to win that game. It was Kyron's got to play out of his mind, and the defensive backs are going to have to make plays, because he hasn't really seen good defensive back play. And Tech's defensive backs did make plays. You get 2 interceptions. I thought they did a decent job holding Miami a bit, but you kind of have to, I don't want to say play perfect, but if we're looking back why Tech didn't win that game, it's literally like a fake field goal that didn't work and a
two or three
and
mistakes.
a miss executed squib kick. Like that's the reason Tech didn't win the game. And so Cal has a really big task, but I think it will help being in Berkeley. I think it will help that there will be a lot of energy around that game. And I think it'll also help that Cal is going to be an offense that's comfortable just running the ball, whether it's with Mendoza, whoever.
How's your O-line, Rob?
You know, the O-line's not as good as we expected them to be. And we're kind of, banking on, we had great offensive line coaches in prior years, like Steve Greatwood, who came from Oregon. And we're kind of hoping that one of Greatwood's offensive line things was that those offensive lines got better as the season progressed. And we're kind of hoping that's the same thing here. Like the Florida State game, a big question that we had was we started our center, Will McDonald, who's a transfer from Coastal Carolina, and Vadakani, who's been with us for years, who's probably our best offensive lineman. Both of them had not played for a few weeks. Vadakani hadn't played all year. And then we put them straight into the starting lineup. And, it was clear there were communication errors, not just with the pre-snap penalties, but just even handing off blocking assignments. And so our question coming out of that Florida State game was like, would it have been better if we just played the guys that had been playing with each other and just spotted them in moments instead of having them start? And that's the biggest question for us now is if they're healthy, have we cleaned that up and the communication stuff and gelled them together over the last 2 weeks for those guys to be able to play? Like it was a question of continuity versus talent. Will McDonald and Vadakani would have raised the talent floor, but they just haven't played with our entire line. And our left tackle, Nick Mara, who I think is going to be great, is his first year starting on the offensive line and is a former tight end in high school who we gray shirted and then transformed into an offensive tackle. Like that.
We've done some of that over the years at Virginia Tech. Yeah, we know about that.
So we knew he was going to have growing pains. Like it was going to take time for him to get there. So that's going to be a key thing for Miami too. Was when they come out there, are we eliminating the pre-snap penalties? I think if you guys watched our Florida State game, we had first and 10 on their 11, and 2 false start penalties pushes us back to 1st and 20. Instead of it being.
And that's the difference though with being at home too. That like little things like that you would hope you'd see less. What a complex and nuanced answer when I asked you about the O-line. That was really good stuff, man.
I'm glad I know my stuff. I'm glad I can impress my new friends from the ACC.
Are you a Cal graduate?
Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, that's why. Yeah, he's a smart guy. What's the plan for Saturday? Are you going? You're going. I assume you're going to the whole 9 yards, like all day. It's a late kickoff. I mean, it's like a 10:30 kickoff.
Yeah, for you guys, it's a 10:30 kickoff, and that's kind of what we're hoping helps us because by the time we start the second half, Miami's body clocks are past midnight. So
that's a good point.
Fingers crossed that helps.
Well, it is Miami. Like they just start going out at midnight.
That is also true too. That is also true too. Yeah.
What's the tailgate scene like? Do people? Is it a wine and cheese crowd? Because I made that joke about Stanford. I've been to a game at Stanford. I've never been to Berkeley.
Yeah.
Would you say it's a little bit more rough around the edges at Berkeley, or is it still pretty buttoned up?
There's a few tailgates that are definitely more buttoned up, but our campus is integrated with the city, so it's not like we have these large parking lots or spaces to be able to do a lot of these tailgates. We fortunately have had the blessing of having a tailgate with our staff and our writers, and it's grown significantly over the last couple of years. So that's where our tailgate is, and people come by all the time to say hello and all of that. And so that's our tailgate scene. But with game day in there, it throws a huge. Do we take a nap after game day? Like game day's at 6, so.
That's nuts. That is crazy.
Yeah, I mean, thankfully, I'll have a press credential to take pictures and stuff. Hopefully, and that's my role on game days. I'm on the field taking pictures, so hopefully we get that. So I'm there. I think the pit opens like an hour before they go live at 6, so guys will be lining up. I know most of our staff will probably be lining up around 4:30 for that, and then. Game day happens until 9. Then everyone heads home for a nap if your home's close enough. Some guys actually got a hotel room around Berkeley for Friday night into Saturday afternoon, and then tailgate starts around 4. And we got a bunch of things planned for that, and then kickoff at 7:30. So
what a long day. I am jealous, dude,
Yeah.
because that sounds. We remember those game day days. Our last game day,
Mhm.
Sam, I think was 2017.
Clemson 2017. Yep.
It's still the image on if you're on
Yeah.
YouTube TV. It's still the
Still.
image of them at Virginia Tech
That's
from
pretty cool.
2017.
But before you go, Rob,
Yeah.
I do have to ask you with tailgating and stuff like that.
Sure.
Explain to the people who don't know what Tightwad Hill is.
So if you look at a picture of our stadium, first of all, our stadium is built on a fault line. There is an active fault line that goes through the
How
entire
California of you.
from end zone to end zone. Two fun facts. When the OA team walks out of the locker room, there is a placard on the wall immediately as you exit that tells you what to do in case of an emergency of an earthquake, just to kind of mess with the minds a little bit.
That's pretty good.
And then also, if you go to the north end zone, there is a strip of turf that kind of like zigzags. That is and it's a different color. They actually did that on purpose that it's the actual fault line that's there, and it moves ever so tiny. I think maybe less than a millimeter every year, where they have to actually fill in the black pellets because it's shifting just a little bit. So those are fun facts. So because of that, there's a mountain range, basically, in the hills behind the stadium. There's one particular hill that overlooks into the stadium. So a lot of the fans go up there, and that's where they watch the games. It's a great view of the game. You get, full end zone to end zone views. And so that's where a lot of fans, who don't buy tickets to the games, that's where they go up and watch. But also, right off to the side of it is also the victory cannon. So every time we score a touchdown or a field goal, the cannon goes off, which is done by the rally committee, which is the school spirit organization. So that's what Tightwad Hill is, and it's a beautiful view. There's a C that's painted in gold. There's a lot of back and forth when we have big game week where Stanford frats come and they paint it red, and then we have to paint it back, and a lot of that stuff. But yeah, it's an amazing view, an amazing site. It's just part of California.
Well, look, we are going to be rooting for you. I'll just share these last couple images as we're getting out of here. We got the Hurricanes getting off the plane and the critical race theory book.
Woke versus Coke is the new rivalry here.
Woke versus Coke, and then this was the image that I feel like really made the rounds: the communists versus convicts, which is it's funny because convicts is us making fun of Miami. Communists is you guys making fun of yourselves.
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, there's a clip. You guys can probably find it if you guys haven't. When we played at Ole Miss a few years ago, it's right before a ball is snapped for an offensive play, you just hear an Ole Miss fan just yell out "F you commies!" it's so hearable. And so we've basically just springboarded off of that,
and from Tightwad Hill to these images that I've shared on the screen, you guys are not afraid to make fun of the, I'll say nerd nature.
Yeah, we lean into it.
It's totally leaned into. Yeah. And it's cool. And now it's a part of the ACC. So this, as time goes on, and eventually Virginia Tech and Cal will have their meeting. We're going out there. Us and Miami are both making the same trip after that weekend. We're playing Stanford this weekend, the birthplace of Tech. What better weekend for Tech to have a big win is us against Stanford. But good luck this weekend, Rob. Thank you so much for coming on with us. If you got anything to plug, you said, Right for Cal is the website, right?
Yeah, Right for Cal is our website. That's where all our written stuff is. It's a great community. So if you want to come in there and banter with us, we've said that anyone we don't play in football this year is off our radar. So we won't come at you, Virginia Tech fans. If you come
that's why I had us shaking hands in the first image.
We were telling Oregon State fans today who were in our mentions, we're wait your turn. Wait your turn. We play you in a few weeks.
It was how do I get in there and make it about us was the Oregon State thing. Exactly. I saw that today. That was funny.
So Virginia Tech fans, we'll have fun with you guys next year.
That sounds great, dude. All right.
But thanks for the time, guys.
Absolutely, man. And best of luck for the rest of the season. And hopefully we'll talk to you soon, Rob. Have a good one.
All right. Go Bears.
See you, man.
That was a lot of fun.
Quintessential college football in Northern California.
I mean, listen, that just some guys that likes Southwest Virginia football, hanging out with a guy that loves Berkeley football. I mean, what can you do? Let's get to our ad read, and then we'll go to VT Corner. As I said at the top of the show, College Football Monday is brought to you by Jack and Coke. 2 legends, 1 can, Jack and Coke. The #1 cocktail in the world is now available in a can. It's true. Jack Daniel's Tennessee whiskey mixed with Coca-Cola or Coca-Cola Zero are available in a can at your local grocery and convenience stores. 2 legends, 1 can, Jack and Coke, ready to drink. That's that RTD. You'll hear that terminology. That's what it means. It means it's a mixed drink in the can, ready to go in the grocer's fridge, the liquor store's fridge. So as always, when you're grabbing those Jacks and Cokes, make sure you are drinking responsibly. VT Corner, Sam. Or do we want to do a beer break? Are you having a Jack and Coke? What is that?
No, this is the last of a Devil's Backbone 16 pack I had. This is the big boy, the 16-point Imperial IPA.
Oh, nice. You might need it now that we're getting into the good stuff. So VT Corner, devastating loss to Miami, 38-34. It was a long game. And I'm not just talking about because of that last review. The whole game lasted like 4 hours. It took forever to get through. And there were so many things that happened. And tonight, Sam and I are going to get into the big couple of bullets, and we'll cover more later on. But the beginning of the game was awesome. Like, we came out, we were fighting, we got the turnover, and then it swung Miami's direction because Cam Ward was hitting every pass. They were beautiful, right in the pocket kind of passes. And then he threw that interception. And it was exactly what you had talked about. Like, he will make these mistakes. And it wasn't even that we had great pressure that play. He just made a mistake. And it changed the whole tenor of the game. And from then on, it was back and forth.
Yeah, it was a great football game. I think both teams played pretty well. Like, Cam Ward had some mistakes. He had the fumble. Defensively, I think Miami showed what a lot of people's fears were with Miami, where they have a lot of individual talent, but they sometimes allow big plays. I think it's a really, really disappointing night for Virginia Tech, considering that I think they were in control for a good amount of that game, and they had multiple opportunities to go up by not just 2 scores, but 3 scores at points. To get an interception return all the way down to the opponent's 17 and not get any points out of that.
And did you see the clip today about the tackle on that play?
Yeah.
I had not noticed that before. Arroyo, the tight end, ran all the way back to tackle Caleb Spencer. And what a play by him.
I mean, that was because the game would have been not over, but like Virginia Tech could have ran the ball, milked the clock, picked up a couple first downs, and Miami wouldn't have had a shot to win the game if that's a touchdown. I think this national show, keep it national. It is Miami is still really good, but they are not perfect. And Virginia Tech is a much better, more talented team than they played the first few games. However, they still have real issues winning close games. Brent Pry is now 1-10 in 1-score games, 0-3 this year. And there's a reason for it. There are just too many times where Virginia Tech loses a game because of in-game coaching decisions.
Yeah.
And I thought this game, 2 of them, like Tech ran 2 trick plays. Both of them failed miserably. One of them ended in an intentional grounding. One of them ended in 0 points off of that. And
I still don't understand that intentional grounding call.
So it is, and it's the right call. Only the player who receives the snap can throw the ball away.
Interesting.
Because if you handed the ball off to a running back and he was about to get tackled for a 5-yard loss, he could just throw the ball out of bounds. So it was the right call, and I'm kind of surprised Brent Pry didn't know that rule, but whatever. But that's like, it's one of those plays, like that play has worked for Virginia Tech in the past. They scored a touchdown with it last year. Okay, like cool, have that play. But you're in field goal range It's already 2nd and long. And you call that play, and if that play doesn't work, it's either going to be 3rd. At best case, if that play doesn't work, it's 3rd and long. Worst case, it's an interception, or it's a big loss of yardage like that because he just has to eat it. So I'm like, why are you calling that on 2nd and long, knowing that if it doesn't work, it's going to set you up in a really bad spot? Why are you not taking free points off of the turnover? And if you are going to fake the field goal, and we talked about this, but if you are going to fake the field goal, cool. I said it in the pregame, like, you got to go for it. Field goals aren't going to win it.
We both did. We wanted to be aggressive in the game.
But why are you running it behind your worst blocker?
Okay. But he wasn't the only one that got blown up on that play. I mean, there were 2 guys that knifed their way into the backfield. And so here's my thing. We wanted to be aggressive. They were up 10. And we'll talk about this, and then we'll talk about the end of the game, and then we'll kind of peter our way out and get out of here, because I don't want to do too much VT corner before we get to our playoff stuff, because we're going to cover this all on the Too Deep show. But I wanted us to not be Kentucky against Georgia. That's what I wanted. I didn't want to kick field goals and lose.
Yeah.
And the call was good. Like, it was actually a good call. It just didn't, the execution wasn't there from the offensive line. And people's points that if you're going to do that, and you just said it, give it to Tootin. Run a regular offensive play. Give it to Drones. Let him try to run. Nevertheless, I didn't have a problem with it. And the idea that, we gave up 3 points there, and if we had those 3 points at the end of the game and whatnot, so many things happened between that point and then. Like, so let's not do that, because if you change the score and we have that 13-point lead, Miami could have played things differently and whatever. In the moment, I was fine with the call. I can go either way on taking the points, because sometimes you take the points and it helps you, and other times it makes you look like a coward later on. And so I thought it was a gutsy call, and I don't have a problem with it.
Yep, I think it's one of those. If it works, it's the greatest call ever. If it doesn't, it's a terrible call. And you know what? You're gonna have those. The squib kick. First and foremost, it was a horribly executed squib kick, right? That squib kick either needs to hit somebody in the face in the second line, or it needs to go all the way to the end zone and be directionally kicked away from one of the returners. It was kicked directly at a returner so that they could get a running start. The player got a running start, and because of that, the kickoff coverage wasn't set up in their lanes. So he basically had no one in front of him for another 15 yards after he already caught it at the 15-yard line. So it was just really poorly
and he should have never been squib kicking it anyway, because our kicker's kicking it for a touchback.
Kick it to the Atlantic Ocean at that point, dude.
I mean, we're getting a touchback almost every time. So.
What is it? How much time did they have left? Not a lot. 25 seconds with one timeout. Make them go 50 yards with that.
The bigger issue, Sam, was us not running the clock down before we kicked our field goal.
Yeah.
I mean, that was the bigger issue. We called a timeout to kick a field goal, and we could have ran it down more.
I think Brent Pry doesn't. Defensive coach has never really had to worry about game clock like that in his life, has never had to call timeouts like that in his life. I don't think he is good at gauging clock.
You don't think so?
They need somebody next to him.
He's Mike London levels right now. And listen, I'm not hammering Pry too much, because ultimately there was a few coaching errors throughout the game that, yes, you could say they cost us the game, but we played a great game. Coaching pluses got us into a position. What I'm trying to say is, like, yeah, you can blame Brent Pry for some mistakes, but I don't think you can really blame the coordinators too much in this one. And we played pretty mistake-free, save for a few things here and there. And the clock management at the end of the half, the clock management at the end of the game, it was bad. And
I think Tech is still having a big issue with every mistake they make seems to be amplified. Like the Kyron Drones interception was a really bad throw. I mean, he missed that by 4 yards. And
he's got to be more accurate.
Yeah, that's picked off. Miami gets the ball on their own side of the field. They score 7 points off that. Yet another turnover on your own side of the field that the opponent goes for a touchdown off of. Every single time Virginia
Well,
Tech
wait,
has
are you
done
talking
that
about
this
the
year.
interception that was volleyed by our wide receiver right into the hands of Miami?
The ball was way behind him, though.
Still, but you don't have to volley it to the other team.
Yeah, I mean, you would like to catch it,
you would
considering
like
they
to
gave you
catch it
sticky
or
gloves and
drop
everything.
it straight down.
Yeah.
There are other options here.
Hey,
and
dude, I don't know. Amari Cooper basically gift wrapped and dressed up as Santa Claus to give the ball to the Raiders this weekend.
Listen, I know you're a volleyball guy, but I don't want to be like tapping it to the other team.
But it's still the same point. Like every mistake Tech makes ends up in a touchdown for the other team.
I know. And even if
the
the mistake wasn't on Kyron, it was on Green.
Right. And we hear so much. It's like you lose big and then you lose small and then you win small and then you win big. And I think we were a bit clouded by playing some opponents that just weren't very good. Like Pitt, Wake Forest, Syracuse, Virginia, BC. I don't think those are very good teams last year. Tulane was a mess. Like Tech was losing big to these teams last year. They got crushed by Florida State. They got crushed by Louisville. They got crushed by Rutgers. This is their lose close. Like Vanderbilt's probably a bowl decent team. Lose close. Rutgers, decent team. Lose close. Miami, very, very good team. National title contending team. Lose close. The trajectory isn't as off as people think. I think what is so damning of this coaching staff is that after these games, everyone is pointing the finger at them with a whole lot of evidence backing it up. And that for me is the part.
We're kind of avoiding the headline here, which was the end of the game. And
I'm avoiding it. Yeah.
It's been talked about so much already. It's only Monday night, but it's been talked about so much already. I'm sure some of our listeners have already heard every single angle of the reaction. But what it comes down to is that they called it a touchdown, and there was not enough evidence by almost anyone's estimation to overturn it. Godfrey said on Split Zone Duo, it was the right call, but the process was wrong. And that is exactly probably right. I do push back a little bit on
said the same thing
on the call being right, because I don't think anyone knows exactly what happened, because Felton's ass is on the ground. The ball is not on the ground. Someone has possession of that ball. Now, whether that person is out of bounds or in bounds, I guess then that becomes the question. And to me, Felton's butt is on the ground and the tie goes to the receiver.
Yeah.
And so I'm not so sure the call was right in the end. And
I think
especially the process was completely wrong.
I think one thing there is, let's back up. I think there is evidence there that Felton has possession of the ball and he is down in bounds. And once a player has possession and they are down in the end zone, or they are stretching the ball across the plane, the play is dead, right? So if you're a running back and you're diving, you cross the plane, it gets knocked out. If that ball is in your control and cross the plane, you're good because you have possession on the ground. If you are a wide receiver and you catch the ball and you are in bounds, like the play is dead. What I think ended up hurting Tech was I don't think those officials ever thought it was a touchdown. I think they ruled it as a touchdown so that it would get automatically reviewed. Because if they ruled that incomplete or interception, it does not get automatically reviewed.
That's a very interesting theory, Sam.
I don't think they ever thought it was a touchdown.
They weren't sure.
And here's the thing, too. The ruling that they came out with, and no, they weren't sure. I mean, none of those guys had a clue. And to be honest,
that's
I don't know how they
makes
would
the whole
in live.
Process dumb, is because
it's really
there should be a way to just like defer, right? Like officials on the field cannot figure it out. We defer to replay. Like that should be a thing that the coaches vote on this summer, because now you've made us feel like we were cheated, and we were by the letter of the law.
Well, also, especially because it was very clear the Virginia Tech player is the player who made the better play.
Mm-hmm.
Like Felton went up and got that ball, caught it, and was coming down with the ball.
And whether he completed the catch or not, and listen, there was not a completed catch that I saw on video. And I would agree that if they had ruled it incomplete, no problem. I get it. Miami guy comes out with it.
Yeah.
It was whatever. But like, He brought it down. They called it a touchdown. His butt's on the ground. I think out of bounds player having a hand on it, does that matter if the tie goes to the receiver?
I don't see. That's what I don't get. So I think that rule is in effect because if there's like a fumble on the sidelines and a player from out of bounds touches the ball, it is like a dead ball.
Yeah, but that's different.
But that's where the rule is, and it is different. I've never really seen it applied to a catch in the end zone.
Especially when all the guys are laying down, and his butt is literally on the ground.
And
inbounds.
Two things. When Kyron let go of that ball, I immediately said he threw it too far. Like I immediately said, I was like, that ball's out the back of the end zone. It's too far, because they did it with the Aiden Green one too. We don't talk about that. One, that was pass interference, but two, that was a foot away from being a touchdown. And that is getting overshadowed because Green caught that ball and he is literally only a foot out of bounds.
And he got shoved.
And he got shoved. It should have been a defensive PI.
His foot almost comes down. If he doesn't get shoved, I think one of his feet comes down in bounds.
There should have been a horse collar on that drive as well. They were terrible.
And we could go on for an hour talking about this. We're going to save that mostly for the next show, but a lot of mistakes, a lot of referee mistakes. It was a weird, wonky game.
One thing on the replay official, and I think I brought this up in a group chat, in the Army Temple game, there was an interception on the sidelines that they were going to replay. They brought in Matt Austin, who's the officials guy for ESPN. And I think he had a bit of a slip up. And Matt Austin said, well, I feel like it's an incomplete pass, but I don't see anything on the replay. But the replay officials might feel that way too. And the commentators pushed back and they were like, oh, well, if there's no video, you can't just guess that it's an incomplete pass if there's no video. And he had to walk it back really quick because it was pretty clear that he said, hey, if the vibes are incomplete as an official, I might just call it incomplete if that's how I see it. I feel like
that's
when you watch
how the rules are supposed to work.
It's not how it should work. And I feel like if you watch that play, you don't get the vibes that it's a catch. The vibes are that it's incomplete. And I think they went with the vibes of the play and not what the film was showing them.
And Sam,
that is what is
general, I wish that's how it worked. I wish
if Miami's the one catching that ball, that's a touchdown.
I said the same thing with Dan yesterday. Is that if Miami is on the flip side and they come down with it and they're at home and they're 4-0, about to be 5-0, guess what? The officials magically think that's a catch. Yeah. And that's the part where I don't like the conspiracy theory stuff. I don't think it was clearly some kind of ACC thing, but the optics just aren't good. You're going to the ACC control center in Charlotte. They're looking at it. It's taken forever. The officials called it a touchdown. The announcers are on our side, and they come out and they do to Virginia Tech what we knew they were going to do. I just knew it. When it was taking that long, I just knew they were going to screw us over.
I've been a Virginia Tech fan my entire life. My first game was when I was 6 months old. This is the worst, most heartbreaking month of Virginia Tech football in my life. And we'll talk about it more on the Too Deep podcast Wednesday night.
I've had my most heartbreaking month. It is not this month. We can talk about it later, but I appreciate that about you, Sam. And I think one of the reasons why, and I discussed this with Billy Ray earlier today, you are in your age and your fandom. Yeah. You're in that mode where you are living through the most painful and the most joyful times of your sports life. That's what being a 20-something is. That just is what it is. The Phillies won the World Series when I was 24. And it was the greatest freaking thing that ever happened to me. And Virginia Tech lost some really bad games back in 2010. And it was the worst thing that ever happened to me. And so I feel it, man. I feel your pain. I've been there. And I'm pissed off about what happened on Monday night. I was so angry after the game. And I am proud, though. And this should be the takeaway.
Absolutely.
I am proud of the way the guys played because they were, at one point, almost 3 touchdown underdogs. Yeah. And they should have won the ball game. And so, shout out to our players. We will get into it more and more on Wednesday night. let's talk about what we're drinking. You talked about what you had. Let me tell the listeners. I'm drinking the Greater Pumpkin. I'm drinking pumpkin beer from here until Kingdom Come. Well, at least until the end of October, because I got a bunch of them. I put them on our Instagram. I'm drinking the Heavy Seas Greater Pumpkin. And this is one of those ones that they brew in the bourbon barrels. And let me tell you something. It's got some ass to it. And if you're a beer drinker, you kind of know what I mean by that.
Yep.
It's got that powerful, like the first sip was like, they threw me for a little bit of a loop because I didn't know this was one of those bourbon barrel boys. And it's very, very good. And the thing with these bourbons is after the first one or two sips, it gets better and better and better. Like the first one's kind of harsh. And then once you're into it and it's good. And Heavy Seas does make a pretty good beer.
Yeah, this 16 point is tough, dude. I'm not going to lie.
I would recommend
we got balloons now.
I'm probably gonna give the Greater Pumpkin. It's solid. It's not great. I'm gonna give it 3.75. I like bourbon barrel beers, but some people love them. They are just like they're everything. That's not me. I enjoyed it. It's good. I'm gonna do another 8 to a dozen over the next month. So I'm sorry if you guys don't like pumpkin beer. Maybe Sam will have some non-pumpkins and some pumpkins, but I'm going to stay pretty consistent. ACC notes: SMU crushed Florida State 42-16.
Hilarious.
Mustangs really opened it up in the second half. DJ is so bad. 3 interceptions, a 13.2 QBR. Is he done? Is that
broken
official?
finger?
Broken finger. That's what's going to keep him out, not the horrible play on the field.
Broken fingers. I just report the news, Pete.
That's funny. Well, FSU was just 3 of 12 on third down, 10 penalties, sloppy ass team. Jennings was really good for SMU. 254 yards, 3 TDs, a 90 QBR. So you had a 90 and you had a 13 in this game, and SMU was able to rush for 200. Smith went for 129 and a touchdown on only 17 carries for SMU. They are what we thought they were, to quote Denny Green, before the season. Like they're really starting to play up to that potential.
Yeah, I mean, they were kind of an operational mess to start the year. If they can get out of their own way, they have a ton of talent.
And they only loss right now is to that BYU team, which is still undefeated. Clemson took care of Stanford 40-14. Klubnik was good yet again. 5 touchdowns for Cade Klubnik, 80 QBR. QB Ashton Daniels for Stanford, the team we're about to play. He left the game with an injury. Before he left, threw 3 interceptions. 10 TFL, 4 sacks for the Clemson defense. This is something I'm hoping we can mimic.
Yeah, I mean, like we said at the beginning of the year, Stanford is not good on the line of scrimmage. They tend to, last year, they got kind of beat up on the line of scrimmage. You see that the worst case of that sometimes when you play a pass rush like Clemson has. So I think the Hokies, even though they're a bit beat up on the defensive line, can feel pretty confident in creating some havoc plays next week. But this week.
So Manor,
Manor, I think it is pronounced Manor.
I thought it was Manor, but the announcers keep saying Manor. And maybe they're getting it wrong. Whatever. He was kept relatively quiet against Clemson. He did have a touchdown, but only 4 catches and 50 yards. And he is 63rd in the country in receiving yards per game. He's not having the electric season. Part of that is because his quarterback hasn't been good. And his quarterback's probably about to get worse. And that's, I'm never going to be smirched as second string quarterback because we've had our struggles.
Yeah.
But that's who we're probably facing next week. Duke came back being down 20-0 to beat UNC 21-20. Great comeback and win by the Blue Devils. But is Duke, Sam, the worst power conference undefeated team in the country?
Yes. And UNC is a mess. They're an absolute mess right now. Did
you look at the stats for Malik Murphy? Because
they're probably really funny.
In QBR, this past weekend, when he got a win over their arch rival, he was barely ahead of DJU in QBR. Barely. Second to worst QBR in the conference on the weekend. He's not a good quarterback. It's not a good team, but I'm happy for
Credit
them
to
for
him.
getting that
Credit
win.
to him.
BC survived against Western Kentucky. No Castellanos. Gutsy win. Don't have too much
Yeah.
commentary on that, but a
Yeah, it was
nice
ugly. It
win,
was an ugly
especially
game.
with us playing BC in a couple weeks and me hoping that they may be ranked to give a higher profile.
Yep.
It was a good win. NC State beat NIU by a touchdown. And dude,
NC
first
State's
of all,
bad.
NC State is so bad. Both QBs were terrible in this game. 62 yards total rushing from NC State against NIU. 12 TFL and 4 turnovers gained were the reason that NC State won. Their defense played well enough, and they got a bunch of turnovers and they won, but they are not a good team. Wake lost to Louisiana. We talked a little bit about that earlier. Wake defense was just trash. Louisiana rushed for 257 yards, 3 touchdowns, and their QB put up an 87 QBR against, a G5 against a P5. So I don't know.
I think Wake Forest defensively is a train wreck, and it is the slow mesh. I think it works cool, but I think Wake Forest is in a pretty bad spot right now.
They are in a bad spot. You know what's funny, Sam, is that Ole Miss scored less points against Wake Forest than Louisiana did.
Crazy, dude.
I don't think Ole Miss.
But I mean, Ole Miss has scored a lot of points.
cracked
Louisiana
up
scored a
for
lot
me.
of points on them. Virginia scored a lot of points on
Yeah.
them. Like, it's everybody, man.
Other notable games, UNLV, excuse me, UNLV spanked Fresno. I said rip to their playoff chances.
Oh ho!
Premature because is it possible that they're better since Luka quit?
They might be, because Hajj Malik Willis is not a bad quarterback. Like, we knew he was talented coming in. He's a bit more of a thrower than a runner. They have a ton of talent.
This was on my next couple of notes. Billy put it on the screen here. The service academies, they are rolling. And both quarterbacks are playing at an extremely high level. Blake Horvath for Navy has one of the highest QBRs in the country. The issue is they have played 2 super weak schedules. If you go to the FPI, which I know not everyone loves them, but whether it's Kali Matrix or FPI, Army and Navy have played 2 of the weakest schedules in all of FBS.
Yeah, and it doesn't get any better this week. Navy plays Air Force, who might be one of the worst teams in the country. Army plays Tulsa, who is also pretty bad.
But it's hard to beat Air Force. And Air Force, like last year, do you remember they were bad and then they were good and then they were bad? Like they're a weird team.
Yeah, but this is a pretty bad Air Force team. And I will say this about them, though. Army looks like a machine, and defensively, Army is a good team. I don't think Navy is that great defensively. So I'm curious how this will go. But Navy already has the win against Memphis, and that's huge.
Billy, I can tell he's still watching because he's still making a couple comments here. Are we going to Army Navy at FedEx? Because I know we are all. It's on kind of the middle of us all.
It's at FedEx.
I know it's at FedEx, but it's still
gross.
Army Navy. Like, and both teams are really good, at least better than they normally are. I think one of the fun prospects for Army Navy this year is, can one of them, maybe both, but can one of them get to the American Championship game? Because that would
I
be
definitely
really
think one of them will get there. I mean, Tulane looks really good.
Tulane is good, yeah.
Memphis, I still think is probably the best team, but Navy already beat them. I think Army is very, very good.
FedEx stuff. Billy's commentary here on the screen. But yes, I hope that. Who do you think's better though? Is it Army or Navy?
From what I've seen this year, I mean, Navy has the win against Memphis. They have the better win, but I think Army's defense would shut down Navy in the Army-Navy game. I think Army's defense carries them a bit more than Navy's will, because if one team figures out that option against Navy, like, it's curtains.
It's so fun. It's so fun
amazing.
that they're both good. Like it's I
awesome.
want the double back-to-back Army Navy. Like I want the American Championship and I want the Army Navy game.
Yeah, it could happen.
And if with the Army, wait a minute, with the American Championship, do they play that in the Better Team Stadium, or do they have a location for that? Like, where is the American Championship game? Look that up while I talk about a couple of the other
Tulane last year.
Okay.
Well,
Boise beat Washington State 45-24. Ashton Genty is unbelievable. 259 yards rushing, 4 touchdowns. He's averaging 211 a game. Best running back in college football. And it's crazy because Genty and Tootin are the 2 best running backs in the country at breaking tackles. And I thought Tootin was good. I know Tootin is good at breaking tackles. Watch Ashton Genty break tackles. It is a thing of beauty. And there's a little bit more speed. He's bouncing everywhere. He's not wearing a brace on his knee, and that's what kind of sucks about Tootin. Like he, with all the, we didn't even talk about Tootin earlier, Sam. We'll get to it on 2 Deep, but like he's wearing a brace. He's playing behind this terrible offensive line, and he's still going for 140 yards. Like it's just nuts how good that kid is. Minnesota had a furious comeback against Michigan. Minnesota fell just short, 27-24. That team is really weird, Minnesota, but Michigan got the win. Iowa State, one of your teams, blanked Houston 20-0. BYU smacked Baylor, which a game with Baylor was favored, I think, when that came down to the end. A&M survived Arkansas, and Colorado got a big win at UCF, a game where they were big underdogs. Mm-hmm. And I said, I think Colorado's pretty good. I took Colorado. Not only did they cover, they got the win. So UCF maybe a little fraudulent. Colorado better than some people might think.
Yep.
You got stock up, stock down for me, Sam?
Yeah, let me got your stock up, stock down. Let's start with the positive. We'll go stock up. Alabama. Pretty easy. They now have the best win in college football. I think that Ole Miss loss is huge because that puts Ole Miss in a really tough spot to get to Atlanta for the SEC title game. Alabama, their biggest test is out of the way. Their schedule is still really tough, but they have all the momentum. For me right now, they are 1A, 1B with Texas in the country. BYU, they're still undefeated. They are 2-0 in the Big 12, and Utah has a conference loss. K-State, who they beat, has a conference loss. Arizona State has a conference loss. West Virginia, Kansas, all of them have conference losses, and BYU is sitting at 2-0. You talk about Army, Navy for the American. Give me Utah, BYU in the Holy War for the Big 12.
That would be fun.
That would be amazing.
A couple of my stock up team. Oh, sorry. Finish your last
one more. Boise State and UNLV. They both keep winning. They both keep winning big. And I think the Sun Belt is pretty dead. I mean, James Madison maybe could get that spot.
They are scoring points. I know Ball State's not very good.
Ball State's terrible, but
they put up points on UNC though, and that's respectable.
Texas State lost to Sam Houston. Memphis already has a loss. Conference. Liberty and App State game getting canceled. Unfortunately, I don't know what that's going to do to the playoff picture, and obviously that's not the most important thing to people in Boone, North Carolina right now, but I think it is the winner of the Mountain West. If those two teams don't slip up, gets that spot.
Yes, it is BYU or BYU. Boston. Give me a second here, Sam. Boise or UNLV's spot to lose.
Yes.
And it will come down to one of those teams probably. My stock up team was Arizona because I kind of thought they could go this way or that way on the season. And they went into Rice Eccles and got a win. And we know how hard it is to win in that stadium. SMU, stock up.
Mm-hmm.
This was a game we earmarked before the year. I know FSU is not having a good season. But SMU didn't just beat them. They pulled their pants down. And congrats to SMU. Stock up for them. UNLV was my third team. So you talked about that one. Stock down. Ole Miss.
Yep, got him too.
I mean, it has to be because you can't lose at home to an unranked team if you think you're a playoff team. You just can't do it. Utah, stock down, and I'm sick of the Cam Rising stuff. Exactly. I love Whittingham. I think he's definitely one of the 10 best, probably one of the 5 best coaches in the country. But like the quarterback saga is so old, and you lost at home to a middling Arizona team that has one real weapon on offense.
Yeah.
And Auburn, stock way down. Hugh Freeze might be cooked.
Stock
down for them.
I have Ole Miss and Utah as well. And then my third was a little bit ambiguous, but the mid-major contender teams. Texas State loses a neutral site game to Sam Houston. That probably knocks them out with 2 losses. They also lost to Arizona State. South Florida, done. Get out of here.
Yeah.
Disappointing season in
Very,
Tampa.
very disappointing.
They got crushed by Tulane, Tulane is probably out of it because they have 2 non-conference losses already.
But at least they're playing good football.
They are. The lack of App State Liberty game, I think, is going to hurt. I think Liberty could go undefeated and still not make it. I just with how UNLV and Boise State look, and it's very clear those 2 teams are better.
Once again, Sam, Liberty has the weakest strength of schedule. It's only the first few weeks, but like they have the weakest strength of schedule in the country on FPI yet again. Army, Navy are right above them. JMU not too far above them, but Liberty worst strength of schedule in the country, and it's going to continue like that. They don't play anybody good, and they can win by 1 million points, but they're not better than Boise State, and everybody knows it.
Yeah, and I also have NIU lost to NC State. I know NIU had the loss to Buffalo is really bad, but 11-1 MAC title, Notre Dame win. Yay, maybe. Not a chance in hell now. So
No.
I think it is, unless absolute chaos happens in the Mountain West, which can happen, I think this is pretty locked up for the Mountain West.
Let's go to playoff predictions then. I will go first. Here we go. There is a shakeup this week. It's been a lot of the same for me, but I have reduced my number of SEC teams. Only 4 teams out of the SEC now: Texas, Alabama, Tennessee, and Georgia. In the Big Ten, I gave them a 4th. And this is what I wanted to talk about, because the Big Ten, I put Ohio State, Oregon, USC, and Penn State. I thought very hard about adding Notre Dame to my playoff picture. Instead, I put a 4th Big Ten team. I've got ACC with 2, and this is because the ACC screwed us. They got exactly what they wanted. They're going to get their 2 playoff teams. They're going to get Clemson and Miami. From the Big 12, I chose BYU because they're undefeated. They have a great home field advantage, and even though they have to go to Rice-Eccles later in the year, who knows if Cam Rising is going to play?
Yeah.
And if they make the Big 12 championship game and win, they will be in. I like what their quarterback is doing too. And in the G5, I still have Boise State. But Sam, I'm going to put yours on the screen, and then let's have a conversation about maybe that last at-large spot. Here are Sam's playoff picks.
And mine is pretty much the same as last time, except for I switched out Ole Miss with Missouri. People are not talking about Missouri. I know they haven't looked totally dominant in games against Boston College and the game against Vanderbilt, but it's still a really good team with a very favorable schedule. They have a big one coming up against A&M this weekend. So I think Mizzou sneaks in there. And then my Big 12, my favorite right now is Iowa State. They're only giving up 7.25 points per game. They have the win against Iowa. They have a pretty favorable schedule up until the last couple weeks, but they crushed Kansas State last year, and we don't know what we're getting from Utah. So I think the Cyclones quietly winning games, winning comfortably, playing great defense. That is a really tough place to play at Ames, Iowa as well. So many teams have lost big games at Ames, Iowa. Clemson, Miami speaks for itself. Ohio State, Oregon, Penn State. I think all of those teams can survive a loss and pretty comfortably be in. And then I still think Boise State is the best G5 team talent-wise. Even with the loss to Oregon.
They're going to have chances for impressive wins too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that game is at UNLV, which is a little bit, you would think, goes in the Rebs' favor. But I think if Boise State wins that game at UNLV and they go undefeated and beat UNLV again, I said this last time, but with Genty as a Heisman guy, with how dominant they've looked, their only loss is close at Autzen Stadium. Dude, they might be the 11 seed, not the 12 seed. I'm just saying.
You know that UNLV is playing Syracuse this weekend in Las Vegas.
Yeah.
That's UNLV. A massive game for that program.
UNLV.
I mean, they're favored. It's 4.5, dude. Like it's not even. Syracuse isn't even getting points. They're the underdogs. It's really nuts. And
if they win that one, I think they jump Boise State. I'll say that. Like, I personally would put them ahead of Boise State if they beat Syracuse.
I wouldn't, because Boise State's they beat the crap out of Fresno, who might be better than Syracuse.
And they beat the Washington State's a darn good team too.
Yes, exactly.
Tier is really good. But I'm just
Washington
saying,
State's better than Syracuse.
UNLV has a bit of a resume building up.
They do. But if they beat Syracuse and it's that power conference team, like
They'll play and they'll figure it out.
Why is Syracuse going to Las Vegas for that game?
Well, it's better than going to Norfolk, Virginia for a game.
Yeah, you're not wrong about that. So let's have a conversation about Penn State and USC and Notre Dame, because I felt like Notre Dame was very worthy of potentially being on this list. If you go to Bud Elliott's predictions, he has Notre Dame in his playoff predictions. And I respect Bud and I respect his thought process on a lot of these things. SC plays Penn State in 2 weeks and Notre Dame at the end of the year. So all of these teams are very much intertwined. And my thought process was, Sam, Notre Dame at USC, because the game's in LA, is a de facto playoff game.
Yeah.
Whatever happens in that game, the winner of that game is in the playoff. And clearly, I think USC is winning that game at this point. I think USC can lose the Penn State game, win the Notre Dame game, and still be slotted ahead of Penn State in the hierarchy. Now, that might be a little bit more dicey because of the head-to-head, but like Penn State's schedule is such that if they don't beat Ohio State, if they don't have a good marquee win, it's going to be tough for them.
And I think what is so interesting about this is when we go into this 12-team playoff, we thought, okay, the big brands are going to have a leg up. But you're talking about three pretty darn big brands.
They're huge
here.
brands, yeah.
Like, these are three of the biggest brands in the sport. And I think that makes it really, really interesting, because if you look at, like, if the committee has to make a choice between USC, Notre Dame, and Missouri,
who do you think
Missouri's not winning that?
No.
I don't care what conference they play. And like, I think USC could play their way in there. I mean, your only loss would be at the Big House. Like, you could do that. And
by three.
Their schedule's very, very tough. USC is a very tough schedule and a lot of travel.
It's not that bad though, dude. I mean, look, if you look after Penn State, it's very manageable up until the Notre Dame game.
Yeah.
Like, it really is. Like, if they are what I think they are, it comes down to those two games. And if USC gets one of them, they're in the playoff. That's how I'm envisioning it now. Now, it could be Penn State and Notre Dame. It could be SC and Notre Dame and no Penn State. But I imagine that Notre Dame and SC game is going to be a playoff game, because Notre Dame already has a loss. If they take a second loss and don't have a marquee win, which what's Notre Dame's marquee win going to be? Texas A&M? Like, Texas A&M is going to have to continue to play really well.
That's what I was going to ask. Like, can one of these SEC, I had this in my notes, like, can one of these SEC teams sneak their way into that 11th spot? Like, can Oklahoma 10-2 go in?
I thought about Mizzou, because you have Mizzou, and I thought about them too.
Ole Miss is still alive.
Ole Miss is alive.
LSU
is alive, but they lost to USC, so there's a little head-to-head thing there. I think what's going to be really interesting, just like we had last year with the Texas and Alabama thing, the head-to-head at some point, it's going to come into play and keep someone out of the playoff. Because a lot of these teams have played each other that are going to be contending.
And the reality is, the teams on the left side of the screen, outside of USC, maybe, are just playing for seeding. To be honest, like,
at this point, Georgia
a lot
and
of those
Alabama
teams are
feels like
locked.
they're playing for seeding. I know, and Texas too. Like, you'd have to have some really shocking results. And you know what? This is a broader thing, Sam, but like, it's upsetting to me with the transfer portal era. The top teams are able to solidify those weaknesses, as we've discussed. And you don't see the upsets. I really think that like last year we had like 5 10-0 teams. That never happens. And it's starting to happen in the NIL era, but it's only happening to the teams that have resources, the coaching, the good conferences, whatever. But like, you go a tier down, like Miami should have lost to us. They really should have. And they're probably going to lose to Cal or somebody else, because they're not there yet. Yeah. But like, with Alabama and Georgia, you don't see those like crazy upsets. Like, Georgia beat Kentucky. 5 years ago, Kentucky wins that game. It's that they're able to solidify all the little gaps and they keep winning. Whereas in the Big 12, it's pure controversy because they don't have, or not controversy. What's the word I want?
Chaos.
Because they don't have that blue blood that can just load up in the portal.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it makes it really interesting at the top because, like, dude, Texas, Bama, Georgia, Tennessee, like, that's awesome that those big brands are that good. And, like, dude, some of these players, like Ohio State's freshman wide receiver, Bama's freshman wide receiver, Tennessee redshirt freshman quarterback. These are awesome, talented players. At the same time, like, dude, BYU doesn't have a shot against these guys.
No,
like, not a chance in hell against them. Just mano a mano. And it makes it really interesting at the top of the level. But there is a very quick step down after like 8 or 9 teams where it's like, realistically, you don't really have a shot.
I mean, where did we see the biggest upset of this season? It was Notre Dame, who has strict academic standards and can always get guys in, or Ole Miss, who is historically not even close to being a blue blood, has not had many successful seasons, and is not on the level of these other teams. But we haven't seen Georgia go down. We haven't seen Bama go down. Tennessee is still working their way up, and
it's going to be curious. There are some interesting matchups happening in the SEC where those teams that are just one step below have the big boys in a good spot. Like Missouri gets Alabama at a good spot. Oklahoma hosts. They already host Tennessee. That didn't go well. They have the neutral site against Texas. That's always a toss-up. They won that game last year.
It is. It just bums
they
me
have
out.
There's some interesting games left in the SEC.
There is, and maybe I'm drawing too much of of my disdain for what happened last season, but like I just feel like we're getting away from what made college football so great with the upsets, because even if these teams screw around for 3 quarters, they seem to end up winning anyway. And I hope we get back to a point where there are more upsets, and maybe I'll be in 3 weeks, everything will have changed and we'll have seen some of these top teams.
You did it. I mean, like, hey, Billy Ray, if you're still watching, Billy Ray said USC wasn't a top 10 college football brand, and here they are on Pete's playoff picks in week 5. So, and I told Billy Ray that was going to happen.
Oh man. I mean, what's annoying also is because the conferences are so big, we don't get all the matchups we necessarily want. And so you're going to have these teams that haven't faced the 3 top teams in each conference, and they all have like 10-2 records because they didn't all play each other. And that's another frustrating thing about the modern day college football, but that's not what this is about. The Bama Georgia game is an example of why we love the sport, because it was so fantastic and so well played by both teams. And so it's still 10 times better than the NFL to me, Sam.
Yeah.
Week 6 games. We'll talk about this quick before we get out of here. Mizzou at A&M. Hey, someone's got to get a loss. This is interesting. A&M -1 at home. I don't know what's going to happen in this game. No idea.
I'm taking Mizzou. I don't like A&M's offense right now.
Okay. SMU at Louisville. Louisville, 7-point favorites at home. I don't know if Louisville will cover. I like them to win the game, though.
Louisville's a great team at home, and they're a bad team on the road.
Okay. Clemson at FSU. We thought this was going to be a big game. It usually is. Florida State, 15-point underdogs.
38-13, Clemson.
You think they roll that hard?
Yeah.
I mean, the quarterback plays so bad.
Like, this is the guy who is the backup to DJU. And I think Florida State, what beat Cal for Florida State was their defense. I think their defense has had enough. Like, I think that Florida State locker room's done.
I went out at Ohio State. I put this on. I took it off. I put it on. I took it off. I was like, you know what? There's only like 5 games I'm talking about here, but Iowa and Ohio State has had some good matchups over the years. And this one is a 20.5-point margin. Ohio State is favored.
First test for Ohio State.
Yeah. I think Ohio. I think, God, now I don't know what.
No.
Because last
They're gonna
week I
roll.
picked Michigan State to cover early in the week.
Didn't work.
And then later in the week, Sam, I did switch my pick.
I think Ohio State wins this one comfortably.
Yeah. That's one team, the big blue blood team that not many people are talking about because they haven't had their marquee matchup yet. Miami at Cal, did a lot of talking about that. Cal 12.5-point underdogs, 10:30 p.m. start, West Coast time, game day, whole 9 yards. I like Cal plus 12.5.
I do too. I just think this is a game that's going to be close. I don't know if they win it outright, but I don't see them getting it's too many points for that spot for me.
Yeah. And finally, Syracuse going to UNLV. Have to mention it. UNLV 4.5-point favorites at home. Ah, God, dude.
I think that NIL fiasco might have brought those guys together a bit.
It clearly did last
And
week.
I think Syracuse has clear fallacies as a team. They have a lot of talent, but the offensive and defensive lines are not very good. And I think UNLV and their fun and gun offense is going to really hurt Syracuse.
It's hard to imagine Syracuse winning the game, if I'm being honest.
It's hard to imagine those two teams playing in that stadium.
It's hard to imagine those two teams playing, period. And so, yeah, I'm not going to take UNLV to cover right now, but I think they're going to win. I think UNLV is probably going to win the game. That's going to do it for CFB Monday. Thank you for joining. I had the playoff picks up this whole time. Clown.
People need to see them.
Yeah, right. We're leaving them out there. Thank you for watching. The bourbon barrel's starting to hit my brain cells. You can probably tell.
It's
And
late, Pete.
thank you to Rob for being here because he was great.
He's awesome.
Very knowledgeable.
There are college football fans out west who love college football. Stop acting like they're not. You're not better because you're from Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, whatever. It's awesome football out there. Pay attention to those teams.
Definitely. And until next time, after you subscribe to the Sons of Saturday and give us a like and a subscribe and all that good stuff, 2 Deep account, Sons of Saturday account, go Hokies.
Go Hokies.